so we'll get started. I would love to give you a quick intro for any of you who don't already know Katherine Lacefield. She's the founder of Just Because Consulting and the coordinator and communications manager at Phil Lab, which is Canada's largest philanthropic grant-making research lab, which is so impressive. And she's had 20 years of experience being at the forefront of grant-making research, really specifically in the realm of social and environmental justice, and also overall fundraising trends. And she's participated in countless webinars on CauseVox and just is always offering great insights into how we can do fundraising better and more efficiently, and today more personally. So welcome, Katherine.
Hello. Thanks for having me once again. So I'm going to share my screen now. So as Jenna said, I have lots of experience in fundraising, but I'm not here to really talk about me. I really want to give you as much content as possible in the little time we have. So let's get straight to it. Today, the subject is really going to be around peer-to-peer fundraising, but really how you can personalize both the experience as the nonprofit, but also for donors and prospects and even your ambassadors, as we will cover later. It's really about how you can really maximize the efficiency of a peer-to-peer campaign. So what we're going to be talking about today is the big why of like, what is a good reason to start a peer-to-peer campaign, and kind of setting up the objectives from the get-go to make sure that it's clear for everyone why you're doing this. Number two is going to be setting up the logistics, then your goals, choosing the structure that you want for your campaign, how to deal with ambassadors, a rally event, messaging and social, soft launch, the launch itself, and then follow up and stewardship. So the goal of today is really to understand how, by taking the time to personalize each step, you'll really be able to have the maximum efficiency for your campaigns. So before I get into the big why, let me just say that most people that I've seen start peer-to-peer campaigns, including my own clients, they're like, yeah, we launched it. I'm like, okay. When we built up the page last week and we made it live today. And they share it when there's literally $0 on the donation pipeline. They haven't really planned anything, and they're just hoping that people are going to fall on their page and decide to donate. Unfortunately, that is not how things work. You really have to build up some form of momentum and have a really concrete strategy behind it for it to have the maximum impact. You have to understand that you're competing with thousands of other nonprofits that are using digital marketing to put forward their fundraising campaign. So first of all, the big why is understanding that the point of peer-to-peer is to act collectively instead of just your nonprofit sharing your message. So it's really about making sure that everyone gets involved and spreads that message into their own networks. So why are we doing this? So what's the main opportunity? Do you have something special? Do you have a campaign that's going on that is going to have more of a public, large scale appeal? So that's the important of what's the opportunity for people to participate. Number two, what's the benefits to your community? You have to really focus on not, we have a goal of $50,000. Okay, that's fine. That's great. Wonderful. But what is the benefit to the community? Our community needs a new sterilization clinic for cats and dogs. Our community really needs to clean up the local river because it is absolutely filthy and causing lots of pollution and ecological damage. Whatever it may be, really try to focus on the community benefit. Number three is really the team effort. So what we're trying to do is maximize the reach and awareness around your campaign by mobilizing your network of peers, peer-to-peer, so that they will then mobilize their own networks and then spread the word. So that's really the objective. What you're trying to see is focusing on the team aspect. What can also be interesting is, once again, the personal life mission of the founder. If you try to get that personal storytelling component of, why did this person decide to launch this campaign, reminding people why your organization exists, and having that personal life story can really help share that message. Because people on social media, they want to see your face. They want to see people's stories. That's why like TikTok, that's where number one people are going for information, especially younger generations, more than Google, which is scary in and of itself. But it's because people want to hear stories. That's the best way that they're going to listen to your campaign and to your message. So why else? Well, there's really these four keys to success that I would say for a peer-to-peer campaign. Number one is the visionary or urgent aspect. It doesn't have to be urgent, but it definitely helps when people feel like there's a sense of urgency of I need to submit a donation now because that's what's going to work the best. If it drags out for too long, let's say over 6 months, you're just going to lose momentum and people are going to be like, oh, like it must have not been that emergency. So I'll donate eventually. So you have to really have that sense of emergency. If not, a visionary context or visionary example can be really great. I'm gonna give you a little very concrete example with one of my clients. They are called the Vivo Core Foundation. And what they do is they offer transport of children from Rwanda to Europe to get life-saving congenital heart disease surgery. So they pay really just the transport. They have their partners who pay surgery. They have this amazing opportunity right now to build a catheter lab in Rwanda, which will allow for the infrastructure of the country itself to be improved. And so that all children be able to benefit from this life-saving surgery instead of having to ship them and the trauma and the stress of transporting children and sometimes their family to another country across the world. They can be able to do it directly in the country. So this is a visionary campaign that will really be mobilizing for people of like, we're solving the problem of our organization. Immediately understandable is number two of it can't be this very difficult abstract approach to a campaign. So for example, I work with another international cooperation nonprofit, and when you talk about international development, it can become very heavy. So it's really important to make sure that your message is very easily understandable. Saving children from congenital heart disease, pretty clear. So that's a good example. Emotionally driven is understanding that people are motivated to donate through emotions. It's not through statistics and rational arguments. Most people will give, especially in a very quick aspect like peer-to-peer, will give by emotion. So this is where the personalized experience, which is number 4, comes into play, of by sharing personal stories where people can relate. For example, in the case of Vivo Core, with the founder, she had congenital heart disease and is from Rwanda. She benefited from that life-saving surgery, and she is now a lawyer and doing amazing things to, give to her fellow person. So this is a great example and a story of saying we need to create more stories like this by investing in this campaign. So these are the 4 main aspects that I think you need to take into consideration when you're about to launch a campaign. So visionary, immediately understandable, emotionally driven, and make it a personalized experience so that each person that is sharing the campaign has a story. All right, logistics, the little bit of a boring part, but it's things that are very important to keep in mind. What roles is everyone going to play? Who's going to be in charge of communications? Who's going to be in charge of recruiting donors? Who's going to be in charge of recruiting corporate donors? You really have to make sure that it's clear what everyone's role is and identifying a list of potential roles. IT, who's going to be managing the data, who's going to be setting up the pages on the platform, all of that jazz, set it up in advance. Which platform are you going to use? So how are you going to be actually collecting the donations? Is it going to be hosted on your website? Is it going to be on another platform? These are things that you need to keep in mind. Which currencies are you going to accept? If you only have a very local database of donors and network, then maybe you don't need to consider that. But for example, for Vivo Core, they can accept donations from many other countries that would be interested in supporting this because it has an international reach. How are you going to manage tax receipts? Will the platform manage it automatically? Once again, keep that in mind. And then what tools are you going to use to support your campaign? This can be about your communications tools. So how are you going to be sharing this information? Are you just going to publish directly on social media? Are you going to use a social media calendar? All of these things, plan in advance so you can make sure that the experience is as smooth as possible. All right, now the personalized goal. When I say that, it means that you really need to take into consideration your specific context. While other organizations might be raising millions of dollars through peer-to-peer, maybe that is not your context, and maybe it is. So first of all, you have to calculate your money map. What's a money map is understanding all of the different potentials in your network that would make sense. So how would you do this? Look at your own donor database. How much do people give in general? How much are people giving on average? What is your top donor, your smallest donor? How many times do they give a year? All of this donor data is going to help you establish what is realistically possible with a campaign, but then also asking who are the people outside of my network, maybe in my own personal network, Katherine as Katherine and not Katherine as a member of an organization. What are they going to be doing and how could they be giving? By the way, I see stuff happening in the chat. I'm going to answer the questions hopefully at the end, just because if not, I feel like I might not cover all the data. So just making sure I'm not ignoring you. The four rights of asking is just making sure that when you are going to be asking for people, to make sure that you're respecting their boundaries and respecting the way of asking. So always ask in a very exploratory way of like, would you be interested? We're in the phase of just exploration right now. So it's just making sure that you're keeping track of like, what are the different ways of asking and understanding how much you're going to ask, when is a good time, what are they doing it for, and why should they support it? So those are the fours. When we're talking about the donors, there's different types of donors. Direct donors, so these are people that are going to go onto your peer-to-peer campaign page and make a direct donation. Matchers are people who will, for example, a corporation or maybe a major donor who will say, okay, if you guys raise 10,000, I'll double it and I'll give you another 10. These really work well, especially on Giving Tuesday campaigns. According to many statistics, they're very popular because it motivates people to give to this campaign because their impact is being doubled. There's also accelerators. These are going to be used when, let's say in the middle of a campaign, you can use them to boost morale. For example, if you see that there hasn't been any activity in the last couple hours or in the last 24 hours, for example, you can use a major, or not necessarily a big one. It might not be 10,000, but it might be like a $600 gift or a $700 gift, something that's relatively significant that can help boost morale. Oh, look, we just received this donation of $700. It shows social proof and can encourage other people to donate at that time. Your ambassadors, which is what we're going to focus on next. Ambassadors are people that are going to be themselves raising money for your organization. So for example, myself, Katherine, I will decide to raise $500 for your campaign. This is where the personalized goals come in, is that maybe my capacity is 500, my mom's might be 1,000, or, your ED might be able to raise 2,000, who knows? So this is where personalizing each person's individual goals is really important because it makes it realistic, but also makes it that it respects their capacity. You might also think about influencers, so people that might not be the ones making the big donations, but they can give visibility to your organization. So they might share it on their own networks. Once again, visibility is important. They might invite other people and they might give credibility to your campaign. And the final one is the crowd, is people that are not necessarily already in your network. So by sharing it on social media and increasing visibility, you might have some random people that follow on your page and get inspired by your campaign. So how do you calculate your full goal? It should be about the number of ambassadors. So how many people? Let's say if you have 20 ambassadors and they each want to raise $1,000, then you have a $20,000 individual big goal. You might want to add how much your organization also believes they can raise. So you might have a $25,000 goal. Whatever it is, it should be based on that realistic capacity. Because the worst thing you should do is to start a campaign for $100,000 when you have no proof to back up that you can reach there, and then you fail. People like receiving the results at the end of the campaign. They like making sure that they reach it. So that's just one thing that I'd like to add on. Choosing your structure, this is where, once again, personalizing your campaign to what is useful for you makes sense. So when I say offer counterparts, well, if you're doing tax receipts, you just have to be careful that the counterpart does not have a value that is too big. If not, you cannot give counterparts. And it might be easier in that case to just not give tax receipts, but it could be a very good incentive. I'll give an example. I'm on the board of a nonprofit that fights against GMOs and pesticides. And we did a campaign to create a GMO guide of like which foods and which companies use GMOs and which do not. And it was about a $10,000 or $15,000 campaign. It wasn't huge, but what they offered as a counterpart is that if you made a $50 donation, which is for that organization, it was like more on the bigger donations. They would send you a book that was on the history of Monsanto, which is very directly related to the cause. So this was, of course, a very big motivation. Of course, the book is not worth $50, but if I get a book that's also spreading awareness and visibility to the organization, you're kind of doing a dual purpose. You're still in the counterpart fulfilling your mission, but also encouraging people to give a bigger donation. Of course, in this case, I would recommend having a partnership with either the publisher or with the bookstore that can provide these counterparts either for free or at a really big rebate so that you're not cutting too much into your donations. You can also have a fun challenge if you reach your goal. I've been working with this organization where they're all about like crazy about nature. So they do environmental education for children. And what I suggested they do is that if they reach their goal, that they would have to go and jump into a frozen lake in the middle of winter and take pictures, which they all did not want to do. And that's exactly why they should have done it, because people are going to be motivated. Okay, if we reach our $20,000 goal, all of these people who are my friends, my colleagues, we're going to have to go jump into a frozen lake. We're Canadians, we're weird. Then it's much more motivating to give. It's kind of like we have this campaign that is in French is défi tête rasée. So it's the shaved head. It's for cancer. Every year, people will say, okay, if I raise $2,000, I'm going to shave my head, donate my hair to cancer, and also, of course, donate the money to the cause. This is a very big incentive for people because it has value behind it. I would also suggest looking into how long you want your campaign to be. I've seen campaigns that go over months and months and months. Unfortunately, like I was mentioning before, this just ruins any capacity to build up a momentum. It's over too long and it's going to take you too much energy to maintain it. So in some organizations, I recommend having a 48-hour blitz or maybe a week long, but it really shouldn't be that long because you want to make sure that you're being able to focus all of your attention, gain visibility over 1 week period of time max, and then reach your objective. So of course, are you going to be using influencers, local celebrities, etc.? These are all things that you should choose in advance. Identifying your key players. So ambassadors are going to be the ones that are doing the fundraising for you kind of on the side. So these could be board members, it could be members of your executive team, it could be existing volunteers, significant major donors that instead of just asking them for a gift, you can say, hey, would you be interested in supporting us more by collecting money in your organization for the organization? So for example, if they're used to giving a $2,500 gift, usually you can say, okay, how about you match that gift and then collect 2,500 within your network. That way you're doubling it. These are little examples of how you can motivate your ambassadors. You can also look into local influencers or actors or any other people that could have celebrity status, even if it's even just on the community basis. And then you can identify their roles. So what are their personal and team goals? Are they going to be the team captain? Are they going to be a team leader? For example, a board member might want to lead the rest of the board into reaching their own team goals. Are they going to be the goal to invite other people to be ambassadors? Once again, identifying what everyone's strengths are is really important to make sure this makes sense. All right, so that's for ambassadors. The rally event. So the purpose of having a rally event is really to pump up your team before the campaign. So before you're launching this campaign publicly, all of this is happening kind of behind closed doors to make sure that when you do launch, you guys are ready for it and that there's already an excitement and there's already some donations being built up in the back end. So a rally event can be online. It doesn't have to be in person. It doesn't have to cost you a fortune. You can just kind of like what we're doing now, get people onto the call and mobilize them up and pump them up for the campaign. This could be presenting the story, having a speaker that comes, your founder that just gets people to understand what language you're using and just gets them more inspired to start collecting on their own. You can also present the goal. So let's say we were using the example before. Our goal is 25,000. We're going to get 5,000 from the organization and all of our ambassadors. Your team objective is $20,000. You can also mention personal goals. Like you can pinpoint people in advance of like, okay, what's your goal? What's your goal? Which can get people to get an idea of like what everyone else is doing. Because sometimes people tend to lowball. They'll say like, oh yeah, I can commit to 200. But if they see that everyone else is giving it's having higher objectives of 500, of 1,000, and they're getting inspired, maybe they'll be inspired to also have higher commitments. This is also a great opportunity to build your community around the campaign, and that will lead to maybe potential future either good donor relationships or also just more possibilities for the next year. So having those in-person gatherings or online are a great way of building up your energy around the campaign. Okay, so the messaging and socials, the VCR strategy, don't worry, we're not going back into the 80s and 90s with VCRs, but it's really about having a really strong social media and communication strategy. So this can be both emails and on socials, but the VCR stands for varied. So you might want to have some posts that talk about statistics, that talk about certain key points of information, videos, and also some long form content like articles, but you want to mix it up. You don't just want promotional statistics of explaining your cause, but you also don't want just long form articles. Number two is consistency. You want to have the same campaign messages being repeated. There's this famous saying that everyone knows, you have to hear the same thing 7 times before you actually hear it. Same thing goes for your strategy. Make sure to send your key messages as often as possible. And regularly. You should be posting every day during your campaign, if not more. On certain platforms like TikTok, for example, or Instagram, you might want to be posting more than once a day. Whereas on LinkedIn, you might want to just favor one stronger post a day. So once again, checking the best times, you can use either a social media calendar like Hootsuite or Vista Social or any of these social media platforms that allow you to see what are the best times to post. Or you can also check with your own analytics of when are people most reacting to your posts. So this is for the communication strategy of really, once again, it is a personalization in the sense that every campaign is going to be managed differently, but all of your communications should be specifically about this campaign. Best practice tips for messaging in socials. Number one is you can create a personalized hashtag. So this way, whenever your team or your ambassadors are sharing something, they use that hashtag. It makes it much easier for the organization to then repost, engage, and share. And as we know, this is what allows the algorithm to function more when there's more engagement. You can also tag the key people in all of your posts, maybe as a comment to also add another engagement possibility. So if you're tagging, let's say, your matching donor every time, hopefully they will be also engaging in the post, which can create more visibility. Be responsive, mobilize other people, your board, volunteers, employees to really get engaged in your social media content. As I'm sure everyone knows that there are engagement pods, of course. In general, it doesn't necessarily create organic content, but for a specific campaign, having key players that are going to be listening to posting these things, it would be very important to be doing that. And finally, use your existing network. So, of course, you're going to be mobilizing people outside, but use your own existing followers to be able to create more content and to be able to generate more views and engagement. All right. The soft launch is before you go live, you have to really make sure you're already doing fundraising and confirming donations before you publish your campaign. So ideally, you're going to want to confirm between 30 and 50% of your campaign before you actually go live. Why? This builds momentum. People are likely to donate if others have done so before, and it shows trust. It shows that the community is already supporting your campaign. No one wants to be the first person to donate. That's just part of it. It's kind of like the tip jar. When you have an empty tip jar, but if everyone you see that has $5, $10, that's going to motivate people to donate as well. So this is when you're going to identify your top tier donors, your major gifts, or if you want, you're more likely to give, and get them to donate before you go live. The page can be available, but not necessarily publicly shared. Of course, different things to keep in mind. Make sure your campaign page is all set up. Your marketing is set up so you're not rushing through it on the last minute. You have your fundraising structure, including your ambassadors, who's going to be your major gifts, your matching gifts, etc. And of course, the peer-to-peer, make sure that everyone understands how to approach the donors in their own networks. The launch is finally happening. So now we've built all of this up over several weeks. This can be done over 8 weeks. There's going to be a freebie that's going to be shared. Jenna mentioned is that there's going to be resources that are going to be shared after. I created an 8 to 10 week template campaign timetable that you can use. Please feel free to use it. It can be very helpful in just understanding how long this can take to plan. I suggest calling. I know it's might be old school, and I know Generation Z is like, no, don't call me. It's going to be terrifying and anxiety creating. But calling people, especially if you have their information, if it's your own, let's say I'm calling my mom, it makes more sense. So your ambassadors can call people to really get them engaged, especially if you have a short period of time. You don't want to have to wait for them to check their notifications on socials. Giving them a quick call can be very helpful. Prioritize your list. Make sure you're calling your bigger and more significant donors first. There can also be a little silent competition. So this could be among ambassadors of like, we're team blue or team red or team green. And there could be little incentives within your ambassadors to just boost engagement. I suggest not starting and launching your campaign until you at least have 30% of your goal reached. Ideally, within the first 24 hours, you'd reach 50%. Then once you're at 65%, honestly, it's pretty much smooth sailing, because then people are going to see that it's almost there and they're going to want to see you succeed. Keeping motivation high with ambassadors like surprises or having different benchmarks. Once we receive, let's say 20,000, we're going to, send, even if it's like a $5, whatever, food coupon or whatever it may be, it could be helpful to just keep motivation high. So what I often think is important to not forget is that even if you're getting all this engagement, you're getting all these people to donate, what's really important with all this potential acquisition of new donors is to make sure that you're doing follow-ups and stewardships. First of all, make sure you have a thank you email set up for all of the donors that participate in your campaign. So what you can do is have it set up in advance so that you don't have to think about it for when you're exhausted from the campaign. Set it up so that automatically when someone makes a donation, they don't just get your automatic receipt. They also get a personalized email that says, thank you so much for your donation of X. I really appreciate it. This is what we're going to be doing with it. You can also have emails that are templates and then you update with the actual numbers, but that follow up with the results of the campaign. Hey, thank you. You've given X. We're almost there. We're at 75% of our goal. Because sometimes people will actually add in another donation. Maybe they'll add an extra $25 or maybe even $50. When you're at 95%, maybe they'll top it off. So making sure to have that follow up throughout the campaign, but also after the campaign. Make sure you have a stewardship plan of how are you going to be bringing these people who donated. Let's say my mom, she donated to the organization because she cares about me, because she wants to support my goals and my dreams, but maybe she doesn't know the organization as much. So making sure you have a stewardship plan to engage these new donors that you've just acquired into loyal donors to your organization. And of course, take the time to celebrate. Make sure to even if it's online, if you don't have a huge budget, but if you have the opportunity to invite everyone, even if it's just to go to a local pub or something, or just go into a park to celebrate, it's really important to make sure that you're supporting these people who have supported you back. So we don't have a lot of time. So that was pretty much a really quick version of it, but I hope that helped. Just before I close off and go check into questions, I just wanted to share. Oh no, I had another slide. I'll look into it. Anyway, I'm launching a podcast contest right now where it's a podcast about the interconnection between animal environment and human causes. And I think that it can be very helpful for everyone. And I do have a little contest where you can win amazing prizes like Lush bath body products. So I'll putting the link in the chat. If not, I'd love to, if you have any questions, I am here to answer them. Oh, there you go. Thank you so much, Jenna, for sharing the link in the chat. I'm also giving away free fundraising consulting hours to nonprofits, so that could be of interest to you. And there's even donations to win for your nonprofit. So yeah, so I'll see. I don't know if there's any specific questions, Jenna, that you came up. I kind of didn't have a chance to look.
Yeah, thank you so much for all those great tips for how to really engage and optimize our peer-to-peer fundraising. I saw one that was kind of interesting about having more of a global or international reach. Do you have any tips on how to inspire a network to connect with people across the world rather than just the immediate community?
So this is where peer-to-peer, I think, is really powerful because you're mobilizing people to connect to their international networks. I'll give you a little very personal example. I'm from Canada, but I live in Mexico now. So when I've had clients that I've helped them with their own fundraising campaigns, I often do my own little fundraiser on my own. I will reach out to the people here. So I did a little fundraiser with my stepson where we reached out to neighbors, which of course had an international reach. So what I would use as an example is mobilizing your network and get them to think, okay, who do you know in other countries that would maybe be able to share it? Finding partners that you have that might be interested in the campaign, or just become very active in the months before you send the campaign. On LinkedIn is a great way of connecting with like-minded people. You can also think about partnering with an organization in another country that has a similar objective or awareness campaign, for example, and then you can do like a list switch where you'll do the campaign together, and that way you can have a list building, kind of like here, like I'm participating in this conference, but I'm also getting to meet a whole bunch of people that were outside of my network, and vice versa with CauseVox. So that can be two suggestions that I would say. Look internally into your own people for them to reach out internationally, or for you to partner with an international organization with a similar cause that might want to build the campaign together.
Great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for just clarifying how, practically that happens, how we can make that happen better. Well, yeah, we're just about at time, but I know there were maybe a few more questions that people may have had. Please feel free to reach out to Katherine. And I think I'll just put her email in the chat, and then maybe they can follow up with you there, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm also extremely active on LinkedIn. So I'll just pop my LinkedIn in the chat. Please feel free to follow me or send me a connect request. And if you have any questions, you can just send me a DM and I'll do my best to answer as soon as possible. But yeah, it was a pleasure. And of course, that timetable with really the explanation of the different things you can do is also going to be shared in the resources after.
Yes, perfect. Thank you again, Katherine. This has been amazing.
No
And
problem. Have a great
yeah.
one. Have a nice rest of your conference. Hi, Rob.
Thank you, Katherine. Loved it.
All right. Have a
Excellent.
great one. Take care.
All right.